All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful and honestly challenging theological works of the 20th century, Jürgen Moltmann's The Crucified God. Get ready because this is a radical rethinking of what the cross reveals about the very nature of God.
Everything really kicks off with this one sharp question. Just think about it for a second. Can a being who is totally immune to pain, completely detached from the mess and the heartbreak of our world, can that being truly be a God of love? And boom, right there. That's Jürgen Moltmann's answer. This single sentence is basically the key that unlocks his entire theology. For Moltmann, suffering isn't some kind of weakness that diminishes God. No, it's absolutely essential to understanding God's love.
Now, to get to that conclusion, Moltmann had to go up against a real giant of Western thought, this classical, philosophical idea of God, which was super heavily influenced by Greek philosophy.
And this contrast is it's everything. On one hand, you've got the apathetic God of classical philosophy. And apathetic here means perfect, unchanging, literally incapable of being affected by anything. Moltmann says this God is more like a demon than the Father of Jesus. But the cross, well, it reveals a completely different picture. A God who is vulnerable, a God who is open to the world, and a God who actually enters into its pain.
So for Moltmann, the crucifixion isn't just some brutal execution that God watches from a safe, heavenly distance. It's something way more profound. It's an event that happens within God.
This is a pretty mind-bending idea, right? The cross isn't just a moment in human history. It becomes a moment in the history of the Trinity itself. God doesn't just observe our suffering gets brought into the very life of God.
And here's how he explains that it works. It's not just one kind of suffering. Within the Christian understanding of God as a Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, Moltmann makes a really critical distinction. The Son, he says, experiences the physical agony of dying and the spiritual agony of being abandoned. But at the exact same time, the Father suffers the profound grief of losing his Son. It's a shared but distinct divine agony.
This quote just drives that point right home. The pain is total. It engulfs the very being of God. So you see, this isn't some distant father sacrificing a son. It's the entire Trinity entering into the experience of death and loss together.
Okay, so this internal divine event has absolutely explosive consequences for the real world. This is where Moltmann's theology gets deeply, deeply political.
When you lay it out, the logic is kind of inescapable. Step 1. Jesus was executed by the ruling powers as a threat. Step 2. God experienced that very execution from inside the Trinity. So what's the conclusion? God isn't neutral. God has taken a side. God stands with those who are crushed by the systems of power.
And this, right here, is the revolutionary heart of Moltmann's political theology. If you want to find God in the world, don't look in the palaces of power or the halls of success. No, look among the victims, the forgotten, the people on the margins. That's where the crucified God is.
This just completely flips our values on their head. We worship strength and victory and success, right? Moltmann says the cross reveals that God's power is found in weakness, God's victory is found in defeat, and God's glory is found in the suffering of a criminal on a cross. But Moltmann pushes even deeper into what is maybe the most difficult moment of the entire story, Jesus' cry of abandonment, or dereliction, from the cross.
This cry, it's just so raw, so terrifying. It comes from the absolute heart of Jesus' agony. What in the world could this possibly mean for a God who is supposed to be one?
It really does sound like a complete breakdown, doesn't it? As if the bond between the Father and the Son, the very fabric of the Trinity, is being ripped apart. Is this the moment God fails?
But here is Moltmann's most stunning insight. He argues this is not failure. This is the absolute deepest expression of what the Trinity is. This moment of apparent separation is, paradoxically, the very source of our salvation.
And this is the core of that paradox. God experiences abandonment within himself. The Father forsakes the Son so that God can enter into the most extreme form of human suffering there is, that feeling of being utterly God-forsaken. And by going into that abyss, God ensures that no human, no matter how lost or alone they feel, is ever truly outside the reach of God's presence.
So, after all of this, what does it tell us about the character of God? What's the final takeaway from Moltmann's incredibly radical vision? Well, we've seen that from Moltmann. God is not some unfeeling monarch, but a loving being who suffers right alongside us. The cross is an event that happens inside God's own life, which places God forever on the side of the victims of this world. And in the ultimate paradox, God experiences abandonment just to bring all of abandoned humanity back home.
Moltmann's work really leaves us with this final profound question. If this is what God is actually like, a being who finds power in weakness, who demonstrates love by entering our deepest suffering, then what does that mean for how we understand, well, everything? What is the true nature of power? And what ultimately is love?